I think Tulsi Gabbard should be confirmed as Defense Department of National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence. I always have trouble with that, DNI, Director of National. I think she should be confirmed. I think she's a good choice. I was on a call. Is she perfect? No. Is anybody perfect? No. Is she better by an order of magnitude than Biden's choice, who I, by the way, didn't even know her name. I had to look her up, and I didn't know if she was any good until I did my research. There's no question. Tulsi should be confirmed. I was thinking about this when I was on a call with Progressive Democrats of America, and they called for their audience to let their senators know they oppose every single Trump appointee, no matter what. They're all terrible. You got to vote no on all of them. And it was clearly just partisan. And I'm disappointed because I would like to talk to the person who gave that advice. But they won't talk to me. But I'd like to talk to them and say, well, what is it exactly about Tulsi that you don't like? Because it seems to me her record is exactly what we want. Now, again, not perfect. But in a Director of National Intelligence, she has stood up. She has spoken truth to power in her career over and over. She has served our nation in the military. There's no possible question that I'm aware of any kind of corruption. She is the right choice, and I find it absolutely disgusting the way she's likely to be torpedoed by Democrats and Republicans, and that progressives are perfectly good with this. It's really, really horrific. All right, don't forget, click that like. There's the little thumbs up. Don't forget, I showed you the FB GIF. And also, I will do a subscribe. I don't want to lose my OVO. I want to do that. So I'll also do a quick subscribe now as well. I have to do it this way. 240. Oh, I got my like and my, let's get rid of the like. There we go. Just subscribe now. Here is Michael Bennett. I used to get accused, or I was accused in a former life when I was doing radio, that I was too pompous about having attended Wesleyan University, which is not the most well-known college by far. It doesn't resonate like Harvard, Yale, or Stanford, but I had and still have a lot of pride in my alma mater, nevertheless. I'll just point out that, yes, Michael Bennett did attend my alma mater. He is a Wesleyan University graduate, and his father, Doug Bennett, and I believe his father's name is Michael Douglas Bennett, and Michael Bennett's real name is Douglas Michael Bennett, so each just goes by their middle name, or maybe I have it reversed. I'm not sure, but I know that the senator from Colorado, who you can see his hands apart, we'll play his clip in just a moment, he goes by Michael Bennett, and I'm not sure if it's Michael Douglas or Douglas Michael. I don't know, one or the other. Here he is questioning Tulsi Gabbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to repeat my colleague's question to you. Thank you for being here. To answer these questions and for your service. Was Edward Snowden a traitor to the United States of America?
Now, it's such a strange question, right? Like, was he a traitor? I mean, I guess I kind of get it. You're just really trying to nail down her support, the positive things she said about him. Was he a traitor? But it's just like you're trying to just come up with a smear word, right? You're not actually into a discussion. You're not having a conversation. Did Michael Bennett do our nation a service? I'm sorry. No, Michael Bennett is not doing our nation a service with that question. But you could ask this question like, well, what was good? What good came out of it? Because you said some pretty positive, complimentary things about Edward Snowden, who is a whistleblower, who revealed ultimately to Wikipedia the NSA spying program. He was working, I believe, for NSA, and he said, hey, this is wrong. We're doing all this wiretapping, and we don't have legal authority to do it. And people don't know, of course, that we're listening in. And this violates the Constitution against unreasonable searches and seizures. So without warrant, unwarranted, warrantless. That's the word. So you could ask and you'd say, well, did he hurt our country or didn't he? Did he put our service people at risk? Did he put us in danger? All of those, I think, are fair questions. But to just simply say, well, was he a traitor or wasn't he? It's such a gotcha question, and it's so designed to put her on the spot rather than to shine light in the darkness. So immediately I'm pissed off at Bennett for that question. But let's continue.
Senator, I will also repeat my answer. He broke the law.
You said earlier that you were...
By the way, it's very far from clear that he broke the law, that Edward Snowden broke the law. There are protections for whistleblowers. They are not considered to have broken the law if they expose government wrongdoing. And in certain cases, yes, you do have to go to your superiors. You do have to go up the chain of command. You can't just go to the New York Times, or in this case, WikiLeaks, and say, this is what our government is doing. It's illegal. Here's the evidence. But that's not what Edward Snowden did. Edward Snowden did go up the chain of command. He did tell his superiors. He kept going. He was told to shut up and keep his nose to the grindstone. So I don't even accept what Gabbard just said there, that Snowden violated the law. But okay, she's doing it because she wants to be confirmed. And yeah, maybe Paris is worth the mass in this case. I'm not going to scold her for that.
By a question that my colleague from Kansas asked, which I think was his duty as somebody on this committee to fulfill his responsibility to advise and consent. We are not here to be a rubber stamp for the President of the United States. So let me ask you again.
I mean, what a jerk, huh? Right? Like, what an obnoxious, preface. And again, what these senators see these hearings as is to grandstand, is to put together sound bites, to be praised for resistance and standing up to MAGA, not for doing their job, not for doing their due diligence, not for being straight shooters. Michael Bennett ain't none of those things.
You believe, as the chairman of this committee believes, as the vast majority of members of our intelligence agencies believe, that Edward Snowden was a traitor to the United States of America.
Senator, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will work with you to make sure that there is not a...
So he just won't let her talk. He's not interested. Horse's ass. I do want to get, he says he absolutely is. Bennett goes on to say that Snowden is absolutely a traitor, but let's just see if we can get a little more of that, because I want to really put up the debunking of Michael Bennett, who's trying to embarrass and humiliate Tulsi Gabbard.
Social media, it's not a moment to propagate theories, conspiracy theories, or attacks on journalism in the United States. This is when you need to answer the questions of the people whose votes you're asking for to be confirmed as the chief intelligence officer of this nation. As my colleague said, this is not about you. It's about the people that serve
right. What a jerk. So I'm not going to I can't even watch that. It just turns my stomach. But again, the man that Michael Bennett calls a traitor, that many other Democrats and Republicans are calling a traitor, is the man who did great service to our nation, a man who is a true patriot, who is truly brave. You know, I've said this many times, that my definition of a patriot, and I think it's the right one, and I'll fight anyone who disagrees, is somebody who sacrifices for their country. So you go fight for our country in the military, you give up a comfortable existence, that's a sacrifice. I may not agree with the cause, I may not think it's righteous, but you still gave up something for your country. I give that a lot of, I give that a lot of respect. Edward Snowden gave up an awful lot. He was making a lot of money. I believe he was a contractor. I said he was working for the NSA. I believe he was a contractor. He was making well into the six figures. He totally ruined his life to tell us that we were being spied on, to tell us that our government was conducting illegal activity. I want someone as Director of National Intelligence who recognizes the service that Edward Snowden did. I want someone who is our Director of National Intelligence who doesn't believe in spying on every American without a warrant. Tulsi Gabbard is the right choice to be Director of National Intelligence. And there's so much more. She's going to respond to a Republican, Ted Budd, whom I had barely heard of. I think I mentioned the journalist from The Intercept who does a lot of videos. Ryan Grimm was saying he believes Ted Budd will in fact vote for Tulsi, but her nomination probably will not make it through confirmation. We'll see. Here's what her exchange with Ted Budd was. It's more polite, it's more respectful, and I think it gives you better insight into why Tulsi Gabbard should be our Director of National Intelligence.
What you're saying, false?
Yes. Did he betray a duty? Did he betray the trust of the American people? Which is, according to Merriam-Webster, that's the definition of a traitor.
Edward Snowden broke the law, and he released this information in a way that he should not have. He also acknowledged and exposed information that was unconstitutional, which drove a lot of the reforms that this body has made over the years to make sure that Americans' constitutional rights are protected.
Well, for what it's
So I want to stop it right there, or actually it stopped itself. How could you oppose her nomination? I really want to know, if you disagree with her as Director of National Intelligence, based on what? She just acknowledged that what Snowden did was critically valuable to our nation, to our people. So I'm totally confused as to what argument there would be. Now, that's not enough, right? I mean, well, it is enough in my opinion, but there's more. I mean, this was a really bold pick by Trump. Why would you torpedo her? She doesn't just speak truth to the Democrats. Snowden's revelations of the illegal Obama program, the program he started, or he certainly expanded greatly. Maybe it was started under W, I'm not sure, maybe even before him. But a program that was largely and correctly associated with President Obama. Snowden exposed that. And Gabbard, supported Snowden, and Obama don't like it. Hillary doesn't like it. Hillary doesn't like her because she went after, because she left the DNC because it was putting a thumb on the scale for Hillary in 2016, and she decided to work for Bernie. But she doesn't only go after Democrats. She's not a partisan. In 2020, she said there was no justification by Trump for killing the Iranian general Soleimani. Qasem is how it's pronounced, I believe, Soleimani. She said it was like a war. It was an act of war. She said it made us less safe. I mean, look, she's really something. She's speaking truth to power. Whoever's in power, who else does that? And she was totally right. It was a terrible thing that the Trump administration did. Now, by the way, I give Trump a lot of credit for nominating her. This is someone who was harshly critical of an act he took. And he's like, yeah, I like her. She's bold. That's what I want as my Director of National Intelligence. And you know what? That's also what I want as director of national intelligence. You got to admit, Trump gets encomiums for that. All right, 240-242-5646. We're going to keep going a little longer. I think you can see just how good Tulsi is when you compare her to the previous director of national intelligence. There she is, Avril Haines. Now, the name was kind of vaguely familiar to me, so I looked her up because, I don't know. Maybe she had some sort of really impressive CV, and maybe Tulsi doesn't even look that good compared to her. Maybe there's somebody better out there. So I looked up Avril Haines, and I read, and this is going to be cursory. This goes from her Wikipedia page, but I think it's all correct what they have in there. She is an American lawyer. Now contrast that with Tulsi, who is an American military officer. She's a lawyer. She's never served in the military. She has been a functionary. She was the deputy national security advisor and then deputy director of the CIA under Obama. It's impressive, no question about it. She was deputy counsel to the president for national security affairs before that. So she just climbed the ladder. She impressed Obama. The bottom line, she did what Obama wanted her to do. She didn't impress any officer. She didn't impress a commanding officer or her professors or anything like that. I presume she was a good law student. I don't know. Smart. She was at Johns Hopkins. She went to Georgetown Law. I mean, that's impressive. What did she do that impressed Obama? Could we look at her record and say, oh yeah, she did some really good stuff. She was a positive influence. So here's what Wikipedia tells us. She worked closely with John Brennan, I think it was with the CIA, on how to make a policy on how to kill people. She was the person you went to determine whether you could lawfully incinerate somebody by a drone strike. So here's a comment from Shade. Shade, please call. You don't like Tulsi? You don't like someone who tells the president, who tells Trump that he did a terrible thing by assassinating a general? You don't like somebody who says that Edward Snowden did a great service to our nation? Why not? Tell me why not. You say it would be unwise to put her in a position of authority. Why not? Why would it be better to have somebody whose policy was to determine when you could lawfully incinerate someone by drone strike? And basically, it was always lawful. It wasn't like Avril Haines, unlike Tulsi, who said, no, the government needs to step back. The government doesn't just get to spy on you because it feels like it. Haines, by contrast, was instrumental in establishing the legal framework and policy guidelines for drone strikes, which made targeted killings all over the world. This is the Biden pick. Targeted killings all over the world, a normal part of U.S. policy. That's okay, right? That's okay. Democrats were perfectly fine with somebody who made targeted killings U.S. policy all over the world. Did she put any guardrails up? Did she say, no, we don't get to kill people willy-nilly just because some general or some informant tells us they're a member of Al-Qaeda? Did she put any guardrails up? Well, she said you can only do it if it's legal. You can only drone someone. You can only incinerate someone legally. But she didn't say what law you had to comply with. Kind of sounds a little like John Yoo, right? Remember John Yoo? He was the torture czar under W and Cheney W administration, where he said, hey, if the president does it, it's okay. The president can torture people, it's okay. It's not even torture. Well, it sounds like that's what Avril Haines said. You can drone people whenever you want. We're going to make it normal American policy as long as it's done lawfully. But there's no law that I can point to that tells you what to follow or not to follow. So according to shade. The concern is our allies are scared that she would leak secrets. Well, the criticism of Snowden was that by telling us, by letting the American people know that we were being spied on, that we are being spied on, we made our troops less safe. No, not one death has been attributed to Edward Snowden. Not one botched operation has been attributed to Edward Snowden. So I don't take those concerns at all seriously. All right, so back to Haines, back to the predecessor, I guess the standard, right? We would at least expect, probably most of you would say, there's no way a Trump appointee, or I shouldn't say most of you, that's not fair, but the Democrats would say there's no way a Trump appointee could be anywhere near as good as any of the Biden-Harris picks, right? So let's just look a little more. So not only did Avril Haines make extrajudicial targeted killings U.S. policy when she was working for Obama, but what did she do when Trump took office? Well, you know what she did? She joined Antony Blinken at West Exec Advisors, a consulting firm with a secretive client list, which includes high-tech startups seeking Pentagon contracts. That's who Joe Biden picked to be Director of National Intelligence. Somebody who consulted for Palantir Technologies. They're a spy company. Palantir are these rocks, the seeing rocks that you can see all over Middle Earth that J.R.R. Tolkien, created. So they're like ways that you can spy on leaders, on presidents, on everyone, everywhere. That's who Avril Haines is. Somebody who doesn't see any limits on the power of governments to spy on you and anybody else. Contrast that with Tulsi, who believes firmly, clearly in the rule of law and will stand up to anyone, including Trump, including Obama, who violates what she believes, and I think correctly so, should be and is the law of the land. Haines knew her position smacked of corruption, smelled really bad. So before the hearings, when she was nominated for DNI, she scrubbed her resume. This is the fact that Joe Biden had a really bad Director of National Intelligence, the fact that he had corrupt Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and also a bloody Blinken. The fact that his Secretary of Defense was, I always forget his name, Lloyd Austin, I'm sorry, also, flacked for, worked for, consulted with defense company corporations. That doesn't mean we should therefore let it go when Trump does the same thing. But that, there's fairness and fairness. If you're going to just simply wave a flag in front of, Haines and say, oh, welcome on board, but we're going to subject Tulsi to the most rigorous scrutiny. That doesn't sound right, does it? It doesn't sound like these are people that we should, have any faith in, meaning the Democratic Party. And again, the answer is Trump's no hero. Trump's problematic at best, and on his best day, he's very problematic. We got to go in a different direction, folks. We cannot continue to bounce back and forth like a ping pong ball between these two horrific, atrocious parties. Haines confirmed 84-10. There was no question about her. The most corrupt insider. Somebody whose policies were horrific, who made us all less safe. And there was no debate even. Oh, yeah. Bernie asked her a few hard questions. All right, 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. Just to be fair to Shade, he says, Snowden, I would have pardoned. Well, agreed. So that's another argument, certainly for Tulsi. She's not the only Trump appointee, nominee, I should say, who's running into some roadblocks. Let me play this little clip. Now, I was debating my little thumbnail, and I ultimately just wanted the free-for-all. It's easier for me not to put together a new thumbnail and all that. But I would have put a check where he was going to have a picture of RFK Jr. and a picture of Tulsi. And I was going to have a check over Tulsi and an X through RFK Jr. because I don't think RFK Jr. should be confirmed. I understand now. I was watching Glenn Greenwald. I'll play an exchange where RFK Jr. has with Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, which is kind of interesting. And it kind of devolved into this nasty talking over each other, yelling. But it started out pretty good, and I want to play some of it because I thought it was interesting. I would not vote for RFK Jr. I understand the Glenn Greenwald argument. I understand the Sagar and Genty, if you know who I'm talking about. These are people who do video, do live streams like I do or do podcasts like I do. And their argument, it's interesting because Genty's, I guess, a Republican, a libertarian. Greenwald's kind of libertarian too, but he's much more of a progressive. He's not really, I wouldn't really call him a libertarian. He wants government to step back in many cases, but he, I believe, is a strong supporter of, say, Medicare for all. And government should help people. They're both pretty much pro-peace, anti-war, so I give them credit for that. But their argument is basically, and I understand the argument, RFK Jr. is going to shake things up. At least he's critical of the big pharma. At least he wants Americans to be healthier, to eat healthier foods. Like we are obese. We have lots and lots of illnesses because we don't exercise enough, because we eat unhealthfully. Our lifestyles are very sedentary. So they're saying this is really good stuff. And I agree to that extent. But the guy, his record when it comes to, say, attacking vaccines is just crazy. Vaccines have saved possibly billions, hundreds of millions of lives. I mean, it really is extraordinary. Polio was a scourge when your grandmother was a kid. People would be crippled. That was not uncommon. You had 50 years before that, malaria. And, they knew there's a cure for malaria. Well, you just take, quinine, but malaria, yellow fever, smallpox before then. These were terrible, terrible diseases. And vaccines, people would die or their faces would be scarred. It's extraordinary what even just antibiotics have done. Now, all that, those lives being saved doesn't mean we have good quality of life. We need to do both, and we've been very good at preventing people from dying of diseases. We've been very bad at ensuring everyone has a decent quality of life. But I don't see how you can be Director of Health and Human Services, Secretary of Health and Human Services, if you're that much of a skeptic, if you're that much in denial about the value of vaccines. And RFK Jr., what Greenwald said is, well, RFK Jr. said he's not going to stop the vaccine programs. And I think that's a fair point. He doesn't have a lot of power to stop it. But I think at some point you have to have someone who at least recognizes the value of Western medicine, no matter how badly it's been corrupted, it's been perverted by the all-powerful profit motive. But the thing is, that's not really RFK Jr.'s. If his soapbox was we need socialized medicine, the real issue here is Americans don't have access to health care, I would be, of course, all on board, notwithstanding even his criticism of vaccines, if he said, well, I just have a real problem because these vaccines are profit centers for these pharmaceutical companies, and they advertise drugs that don't help you, and they have an interest in promoting obesity so they can sell you Ozempic, and they have an interest in promoting high blood pressure so they can sell you a medication that targets high blood pressure. So I would totally get that, and I would agree with it. But just because there's so much corruption in the medical industry doesn't mean they haven't done some good things. So I would not vote for RFK Jr. By the way, I totally agree. Here's what Shade adds some more. RFK said Medicare Med Advantage now he retracted it as I'm reading this. Now maybe he didn't say it. I don't know. He's retracting his messages. He said Medicare Advantage initially costs Medicare enrollees more. It actually costs less, but ultimately costs more. Yeah, Medicare Advantage is horrible. It's Medicare disadvantage. Here's the back and forth with Warren I wanted to play for you, and then final words, and we'll call it a week. I'm hoping to have a guy I've been working with Code Pink join me next week. I actually wanted to have him on to talk about Tulsi. I'm not sure if he supports Tulsi. He had some positive things to say about Tulsi, but I'm not sure if on balance he even has taken a position. But I did want to get his take on Tulsi because he knows much more than I do about her. Here's and by the way, if he came out and said, yeah, here's why I don't support Tulsi. There's some issues with Tulsi. Tulsi has been, I believe, there's a vein perhaps of some Islamophobia in there, which I don't like. She is too pro-Israel, which I don't like. But she's so strong against regime change. She's been so, beyond what we already talked about, the Snowden issue, the assassination of Soleimani, her willingness to speak truth to power. She's a maverick. She went out and spoke to Assad. She was right. Our support for Al-Qaeda against Syria was terribly, terribly wrong. This is what I heard Ryan Grimm say. This is, again, in support of Tulsi. She was absolutely right. We should have been trying desperately to stop the civil war in Syria, to get concessions from Assad. But instead, all we did was arm Al-Qaeda. All we did was allow Israel to bomb Lebanon and bomb Syria repeatedly. And Syria, like Gaza now, Syria is largely a wasteland. It's a desert. Like Libya now, it's a desert. I mean, there's a desert, obviously. There's deserts in those areas, but I mean, it's almost sterile. Life just isn't able to be supported there anymore because of American foreign policy. And Tulsi, to her everlasting credit, has been a strong, staunch opponent of those policies.